A quiet Sunday afternoon. A local horse show. Mud on boots, paper cups of tea, and the sound of hooves on soft ground. No cameras invited. No speeches prepared. Just a royal family trying to enjoy a weekend like anyone else. But by the time the afternoon was over, something had broken, quietly, privately, and irreversibly. And the ripple from that single afternoon would reach all the way to the palace walls, shaking relationships that had taken decades to build. This is the story of a moment that most people almost missed. A few words between two young girls. A father who saw his daughter's face crumple. And a prince who had finally, after years of patience, decided that enough was enough. The Wales family, Prince William, Princess Kate, and their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, are known for fiercely protecting their private lives. Unlike some members of the extended royal family, they have always drawn a careful boundary between public duty and family life. So when they attended a local equestrian event in the English countryside, it was entirely in keeping with who they are. There were no official engagements scheduled. No press releases. Just a family that loves horses, supporting young riders in a setting far removed from the grandeur of Buckingham Palace. Princess Charlotte, who turned 9, has become one of the most watched young royals in the world, not because she seeks attention, but because of something she cannot help. She carries herself with a presence that feels ancient, assured, and yet entirely natural. Royal commentators and family historians have noted repeatedly that Charlotte has inherited a rare combination of qualities: her mother's warmth, her father's steadiness, and something that many describe as unmistakably reminiscent of Princess Diana. Those same expressive eyes. That same way of looking directly at you, fully, without hesitation. But on this particular Sunday, Charlotte wasn't trying to be anything except a child at a horse show. She wore riding boots. She carried a juice box. She clapped enthusiastically for the riders. She was, by every account of those present, simply a little girl having a good day. Until she wasn't. Among the group gathered near the family's viewing area was a girl named Lola Parker, the granddaughter of Queen Consort Camilla. Lola is not a working royal. She carries no title. But through the connection of her grandmother's marriage to King Charles III, she had become a familiar presence at family events over the years, close enough to be included, but always positioned, in the quiet social architecture of the monarchy, just outside the inner circle. Lola and Charlotte were similar in age. They had shared spaces at family occasions before, stood in the same photographs, attended the same celebrations, exchanged the polite small talk that children learn at an early age when adults require it of them. But those who knew both girls understood clearly that closeness and proximity are not the same thing. That Sunday, the two were seated near one another. Charlotte, always generous by nature and raised with a strong emphasis on thoughtfulness and consideration for others, noticed Lola watching her drink from her juice box. Without being asked, she offered to share. "Do you want some?" Lola accepted. Charlotte, being practical, they had a long afternoon ahead, added a gentle caveat. "Just don't finish it. We're going to be here for a while, and I'll need it later." It was the kind of thing any child might say. Not harsh. Not possessive. Simply fair. She turned her attention back to the show. A rider cleared a jump. Charlotte clapped. When she turned back around, the juice box was empty. She stared at it for a moment, then looked at Lola. "Wait, did you finish it?" What happened next crossed a line that no adult standing nearby had anticipated from a child in that setting. Lola looked at Charlotte, not defensively, not apologetically, but with a calm, flat steadiness, and said, "You act like you're in charge of everything. Like you're already the queen. Just like your mum." Charlotte blinked. "What do you mean?" "She's not even queen," Lola continued, her voice still quiet, still level. "My grandmother is. Your mum is just pretending. Everyone sees it." There was a pause. Long enough to feel like something had shifted in the air. Then Lola delivered the final line. "And you? You're not special. One day they'll just marry you off and that'll be it. That's all you'll ever be. Someone's wife." No shouting. No scene. Just cold, deliberate words, placed with the precision of something rehearsed, or at the very least, something long carried. Charlotte didn't respond. Her face changed first, the openness draining away, replaced with something still and stunned. Then, slowly, Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't make a sound. She walked across to where Kate was standing, took her mother's hand, and held it the way children hold on when they are trying not to fall apart in public. Kate knelt down immediately. She wrapped Charlotte in her arms, calm and unhurried. She didn't ask loud questions. She didn't look around for someone to blame. She simply held her daughter with the kind of quiet that speaks louder than any words. But those near enough to see Kate's face in that moment said something clear had moved across it. A stillness. A sharpening. The look, as one observer later put it, of someone who has learned to absorb pain without showing it, and who has reached the limit of how much absorbing she is willing to do. William, a few feet away in conversation with King Charles, noticed within moments. He has always been attuned to his daughter. He crossed to them without hurrying, but without delay. He asked one question, listened to the answer, nodded once, and looked briefly, just briefly, toward the girl who had spoken those words. Then he took Charlotte's hand and walked away. Jaw set. Hands steady. Nothing said aloud. But everything already decided. To understand what happened next, it helps to understand the complicated social geography of the extended royal family, and where Lola Parker sits within it. Camilla Parker Bowles, now Queen Consort, has 2 children from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, Tom Parker Bowles, and Laura Lopez. Lola is the daughter of Laura Lopez, Camilla's granddaughter through blood, not a royal by title, but a member of a family that has been woven, sometimes smoothly and sometimes with friction, into the fabric of royal life since Camilla's marriage to King Charles in 2005. It is worth noting what Lola Parker is not. She is not malicious by nature, according to those who know the family. She is a young girl navigating an unusual social position, one where her grandmother holds one of the highest titles in the land, yet she herself remains a private individual without the protections or the preparation that comes with a royal upbringing. But what she said to Charlotte was not a slip of the tongue. It was pointed. It was layered with grievances that are far too complicated to have originated in the mind of a child her age. And that, more than anything else, is what troubled William. Children say difficult things. Children argue. Children can be unkind in the thoughtless, impulsive way that childhood sometimes produces. What Charlotte encountered was different. It was specific. It targeted her mother. It undermined her identity. And it carried within it an echo of something far older, the long-running, deeply painful question of who truly belongs at the center of the British monarchy. That question has never fully gone away. And William, who has lived inside it his entire life, knew exactly where those words had come from. To grasp why this incident struck so deeply, it is necessary to look at the years that preceded it, specifically, the years of quiet criticism that Kate Middleton, now Princess of Wales, has endured. Kate has been scrutinized since the moment she became seriously linked to William. She was called a commoner, a social climber, too polished, too perfect, too controlled. When she smiled, people said she was performing. When she was private, they said she was cold. When she protected her children from the press, critics wrote that she was sheltering them from the real world. The most widely reported and genuinely distressing incident came when photographs of Kate and her sister Pippa, taken on a private holiday using a long-lens camera without their knowledge or consent, were published by tabloid newspapers. William was, by all accounts, furious. Legal action was threatened. Some publications were challenged. But the damage, the violation of it, was done. And it lingered. Over the years, criticism of Kate has appeared in cycles. Her parenting choices have been dissected by columnists. Her clothing analyzed and compared. Her relationship with the late Queen Elizabeth, by many accounts warm and genuine, was periodically reframed in tabloids as distant or difficult. She was compared unfavorably to Diana, then compared favorably to Diana when it served a different narrative. She was rarely, in the public conversation, simply allowed to be who she is. She absorbed all of it with a consistency that is either remarkable self-discipline or remarkable character, likely both. She did not retaliate publicly. She did not court sympathy. She turned up the next morning, wherever the next morning required her to be, and she did the work. And now, after all of that, someone had looked at her 9-year-old daughter and used the same language. The same diminishment. The same suggestion that Kate was performing rather than genuinely belonging. Except this time, it had been said to a child. That was the line. 1 week after the horse show, Prince William posted a message on social media. It was uncharacteristically direct and required no translation. It read, "My family will always come first. Anyone who thinks they can harm my daughter and remain close to us is mistaken." No names. No tags. No palace branding. Just a father, putting a statement into the world with the quiet certainty of someone who has already made the decision it refers to. The message moved through royal circles immediately. Commentators noted its unusual nature. William rarely uses social media for anything resembling personal confrontation. He is known for restraint in public, for measured statements drafted by communications teams, for the careful management of narrative that is part of the job description of the heir apparent. This was none of those things. This was him speaking. The specific consequence, confirmed within days by senior sources close to the matter, was that Lola Parker was removed from the guest lists for future royal events. Her access to private family gatherings, to charity appearances, to the quiet insider world that Camilla's position had provided, was revoked. Without fanfare. Without a press release. Her name simply stopped appearing on the lists. Royal correspondents noticed. Lola was absent from an upcoming garden event at Windsor that she would ordinarily have attended. She was not present alongside Camilla at a charity appearance shortly after. The absences were quiet but unmistakable to those who track these things closely. William had not made a spectacle of it. He had simply removed a presence from his family's space. And in the institutional culture of the British royal family, where much of what matters most is communicated through exactly this kind of silent rearrangement, the message was received with perfect clarity. The Queen Consort's response to the news, according to sources close to Clarence House, was not calm. She was, by multiple accounts, genuinely shocked, not simply that William had acted, but at the speed and finality of it. She had expected a conversation. A quiet word. Perhaps a gentle diplomatic intervention from King Charles to soften the edges. What she received instead was a door, already closed. She went to Charles directly. She told him the decision was excessive, that a child's mistake had been treated as a diplomatic rupture, that the punishment did not fit the moment. Charles, according to those present, looked up briefly from what he was reading and said, simply, "It's been handled." That was the entirety of his intervention. For Camilla, this was, in some ways, harder to absorb than William's original decision. She had spent 20 years, through public hostility, through the grief of an institution that blamed her for the fracture of a marriage the public had loved, working to secure her place within the royal family. She had done the charity work, the public appearances, the diplomatic smiles at events where she knew many in the crowd did not want her there. She had built, slowly and carefully, a position of respect if not of full affection. And now, when it had come to a moment that touched on her own family, her granddaughter, her blood, that position had offered her almost nothing. Charles had not fought for her. The institution had not rallied around her. And William, her stepson, had made a decision that affected her family without seeking her counsel, without warning, and without reversing course when she asked him to. It left her, by some accounts, questioning something she had perhaps never allowed herself to question directly before, whether she had ever truly been inside the inner circle she had spent so long trying to enter. Her frustration, in the weeks that followed, turned partly toward Kate, a direction that surprised no one who had watched the quiet tension between the two women over the years. Camilla reportedly told people close to her that Kate had played the situation skillfully, that her composed public silence in the aftermath had been calculated to maximize sympathy. She described Kate as someone who understood how to use restraint as a weapon. But those close to Kate pointed out, with some justification, that Kate had done nothing in the public sphere. She had not spoken to journalists. She had not released a statement. She had not posted online. The morning after the incident, she had been photographed on a hospital visit, her hand resting gently on Charlotte's back, her expression quiet and composed. The story had written itself, and it had done so in Kate's favor, not because Kate had orchestrated it, but because silence, when you have done nothing wrong, is its own kind of dignity. When the story broke into wider media, first through royal correspondence, then through social media, the response was extraordinary in its speed and intensity. The phrases that trended that afternoon reflected something that went beyond ordinary royal gossip. People were responding not just to a family dispute, but to something more universally felt, the image of a child being made to feel small and a parent standing up in response. Comments from across the spectrum of royal opinion converged on a single point: that what had been said to Charlotte, Whatever one thought of the wider politics of the situation was wrong. She was a child. She had done nothing. And the words aimed at her had been designed, consciously or not, to wound her at the level of her identity, her mother, and her future. There were dissenting voices, of course. Some felt William had overreacted, that a quiet conversation with the relevant adults would have achieved more than a public removal. Others questioned the social media post itself, wondering whether it was entirely spontaneous or partly shaped by advisors aware of how it would land. A few argued that children's conflicts should be handled privately and that elevating this one had made Charlotte's pain more public, not less. These are fair questions. They are the kind of questions that will be debated in the commentary that surrounds any royal decision made under emotional pressure. But the weight of public response rested somewhere else entirely. On the simple human image of a little girl in riding boots, a juice box in her hand, being told that she would never be more than someone's wife. And on the image of her father deciding, firmly and without apology, that he would not allow that to
stand. What emerged in the weeks that followed was not simply a family argument made public. It was a window into a much larger question, one that William has been living with his entire adult life. The British monarchy is, at its core, an institution built on the idea of continuity, of one generation passing something of value to the next. It is a system that carries, alongside its traditions and its pageantry, a great deal of pain that has never been fully addressed. William grew up in the center of that pain. He was 12 years old when his parents' marriage became the subject of competing television confessions watched by tens of millions. He was 15 when his mother died in a Paris tunnel. He has spent the 30 years since navigating the complicated emotional landscape of a family that is simultaneously personal and institutional, where grief is managed according to protocol and love is expressed through duty. He has spoken in recent years with increasing openness about his determination to do things differently for his own children, to give George, Charlotte, and Louis the childhood stability that he and his brother did not always have, to protect them, where he can, from the machinery that turned his own upbringing into a public spectacle. That determination is what makes the horse show incident not simply an unpleasant afternoon, but a defining moment. Because what was said to Charlotte, whether Lola knew it or understood it or simply repeated what she had absorbed in the world around her, was a direct challenge to the identity of William's family, to the legitimacy of Kate's place within the monarchy, to Charlotte's future as something more than an ornamental piece in an arranged narrative. And William, in his response, was not simply defending his daughter from a rude comment. He was drawing a boundary around something he has spent his entire life trying to protect: the dignity of his mother's memory, the stability of his children's world, and the right of his family to be treated with the same respect that the institution demands of them in return. The situation has not been resolved in any tidy way. Situations that touch on grief, legacy, and the quiet power struggles inside an ancient institution rarely are. Camilla retains her title. She continues her public duties. The calendar of royal engagements moves forward with its customary efficiency. Charles remains, by all external appearances, steady in his illness and his commitment to the role he has waited a lifetime to fulfill. But something has changed. In the mapping of influence and proximity that defines how the monarchy actually functions beneath its ceremonial surface, William has placed a marker. He has demonstrated that his family's boundary is real, and that crossing it will have real consequences, regardless of whose grandmother you are. For Charlotte, the afternoon at the horse show will one day be a distant memory, if it is remembered at all. Children are resilient in ways that adults sometimes underestimate, and she has, in her parents and her brothers, a family that shows every sign of having done the difficult work of creating a genuine home within the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. What she will carry forward, almost certainly without ever knowing the full political weight of what surrounded it, is something simpler and more lasting. The knowledge that when someone tried to make her feel small, her father turned around, looked at what had happened, and acted. Not with anger, not with performance, with a quiet, immovable certainty of someone who knows exactly what he is protecting and why. There is a version of this story that reduces it to gossip, to the kind of royal intrigue that fills weekend supplements and social media threads before being replaced the following week by the next installment. But there is another version, one about a family trying to protect what matters to them inside a system that does not always make that easy. One about a woman who spent 2 decades rebuilding a public image, only to find that her granddaughter's words toward a child had undone much of that work in a single afternoon. One about a father who has spent 30 years watching the people he loves most be diminished by words, and who decided, quietly and finally, that the pattern would stop here. Princess Charlotte will grow up. She will take on duties and titles, and the weight of a legacy that stretches back centuries. She will face criticism and scrutiny and the relentless examination that comes with being born into a family that belongs, in part, to the public. But she will also know this, that on a Sunday afternoon at a small horse show, when someone tried to tell her who she was, her father disagreed.